Вітання всім гостям, всім, хто нас дивиться онлайн.
Welcome, dear guests who watches us online. And the topic of our today's briefing is as follows: why the depositors of Khreschatyk Bank are losing their chances to get money back. And we have Mr. Konstiantyn, Vorushylin, Managing Director of the Deposit Guarantee Fund, Ms. Svitlana, Rekrut, Ms. Andrii, Olenchyk from the same guarantee fund, and Mr. Vladyslav Chervynskyi, head of the company that carried out the audit of the Khreshchatyk Bank. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to this event. First of all, I would like to draw your attention to the amount of money which was paid to the depositors of those who went bankrupt before 2014, and this was almost 90 billion of hryvnia, and of course the guarantee fund had to borrow that money. So it borrowed it from the National Bank, and then almost 60 billion were borrowed from the Ministry of Finance, which is also big money. Of course, for me, it's a surprise when the regulator decided to apply such a low interest rate on the one hand, on the other hand, to put this burden on the shoulders of the financial system. So the guarantee fund main objective is to raise the secured amount of money, 200,000 hryvnia. Of course, it's not enough. It was impossible to increase this amount in the midst of the banking sector crisis, but today we came to conclusion that in result of joint effort of all the involved stakeholders, will be able to make the secured amount of money equal to 600 or 800,000 hryvnia. But this would become possible only if our fund will be able to commercially sell the bankrupt banks. Not all the banks who went bankrupt, they are poor banks, and they have, even when they go bankrupt, they have assets which could be sold, and the money after selling that assets could be then disseminated among the depositors. And here you see the balance sheet value of the assets of those bad banks, almost 500 billion hryvnia, which could be sold, and then the debts could be paid, the debts of our fund could be paid, and then we will be in surplus of more than 260 billion hryvnia. Now we're discussing Khreshchatyk Bank. We managed to sell the assets of this bank and collected 32.8 billion hryvnia, and which is not enough. We believe that this bank is extremely characteristic, very specific bank, and resolving its problems, we may set a model for resolving the issues with other bad banks. Dear participants, we would like to we are discussing today Khreschatyk Bank, which is actually, unfortunately, very typical for many other banks, bad banks, whose cases currently are the problem for the deposits guarantee bank. Why depositors of the Khreschatyk Bank are deprived from getting back their deposited assets. Actually, this is the reality that the depositors' claims are huge, and the big issue is whether we will be able to satisfy their claims on the framework of legal norm of 200,000 secured amount. The losses of the bank today amount to 7 billion, and I would like to give the floor to Svitlana Rekrut, who will describe what contributes to that 7 billion. But I would like to clarify why the depositors today have no hope to get their money back. Partially, this is due to our improper judiciary system. The next is that 71 claims or charges in criminal violations was compiled on the officials of Khreschatyk Bank, and the losses in line with that charges amount to 3.3 billion hryvnia. And neither of that claims is submitted to court. So those cases were filed to the law enforcement system, and then they stack in it, and they have not become the object of the court hearings. We suggested that these people should submit civil claims, not criminal claims, but civil claims to courts, and in this case they will be able to get back at least something, maybe not everything, but something out of their deposited money. And nevertheless, we still still hope that the law enforcement investigative bodies will finally produce some result after a long period of time, but unfortunately we do not know what will be the result, and we have no illusions about this. The next issue will be our judiciary system. Quite often our judiciary system acts in line with the three scenario. In 2017, different groups of the bank depositors applied to courts and tried to charge the national bank and accuse it in deterioration of the situation in banking sector. I would like to remind you the story. Khreschatyk Bank was recognized as the problematic bank on April 4th, 2016, and the next day, April 5th, it was recognized as insolvent bank. And from April 1st to April 4th, the transactions dissolving and withdrawing assets from the bank started, and in result of that process, the depositors has had the right to ask questions to the national bank. So at the very beginning, court cases were filed by legal entities. Then in December 2017, one more physical person filed the case to court. And the court hearings took place in the same courts as in the first time, but the court decisions were very different. For the national bank, there is no difference. The courts in all cases stated that the national bank made wrong things, trying to make a precedent for the claimant to sue the national bank later. But in our case, the short period of time between recognition of the bank as incapable and insolvent did not allow to take any corrective measures, to introduce any corrective program to the bank. At the same time, the same courts recognized that the bank was recognized as insane bank too late, and that the NBU had to introduce temporary administration much earlier.
Підтримувалося також і власниками.
And the more unclear the legal situation is, the more difficult it is to find the truth. There is another subject, there is a rather narrative line. Mr. Semenov, first deputy chairman of the board of Khreschatyk, on behalf of the majority owner, applied to court requesting cancellation of the decision about Khreschatyk Bank insolvency and actually such cases now are submitted to in relation to 32 banks in Ukraine, and these decisions about bank insolvency were cancelled in result of court hearings. Such banks, when the court recognizes the bank and its depositors as invalid, they both the bank and its bad bank and its creditors, they get into a trap, because the bank, which is recognized as insolvent by the national regulator, by NBU, has no way back to become good bank, and the depositors are in this case in a trap. If the national bank decision was improper, was void, then the depositors cannot expect compensation for the losses, for the deposits which remained in the bank. They are not subject to compensation. So the main objective is to withdraw the rest of the assets which remained in Khreschatyk Bank. The very classic and bright example was Ukraina Bank. Ukrain Bank. So currently we are waiting for the solution of this situation in the first instance court. And probably the charge period will expire very soon. The third issue which we have is with those deposits which had to be returned to people. They are in mutually settled with the payment of owed credits of other people, and in Khreschatyk Bank 900 million hryvnia were used for such transactions between April 1st and April 4th. When the authorized authorities entered the bank, they found out that all the transactions were void, That is, we can request for settlement of loans from the bank owners, but then again courts interfered, and now we can not change the situation. Who are heroes of this affair? These were entrepreneurs from the Kiev Industrial Group and a set of municipal enterprises. Kiev 5 enterprises from Kiev Institutional Group, whose credits were paid via the scheme, and while the counter-agents of these loans were 24 of depositors. We apply to all the authorities and describing what happened, and if the situation is not resolved, then the depositors will forever lose hope to bring back their money. Svitlana, you know that the main resource of paying back money to the depositors is the sale of essence. The balance sheet value of essence is 8 billion hryvnia. The withdrawal scheme is almost 7 billion hryvnia. Do not have much time. Please show us the slides. Here you see the list of main schemes used by the shareholders and administration of the bank. The most large-scale system amounting to 3.2 billion hryvnia. These were bad credits.
Компанії і хто є власником.
Bad credits of the Kiev Institutional Group. This was done intentionally with a plan. The next scheme, almost 2 billion hryvnia, purchase of trash securities. This is one of the most efficient way to withdraw money from a bank at the moment when the temporary administration entered the bank. This was almost 2 billion hryvnia. Now it amounts to almost zero. All those asset management companies from which those paper securities were bought, they were registered in the same address, so this definitely was a shell company. So the question is, if you have 8 billion hryvnia of assets in your balance sheet, then what is the real value of those assets, and who is able and ready to pay for these assets? Now, I would like to show you portraits of those people who had withdrawn these assets from the bank. And now I would like to give the floor to a company who was forensic auditor, and a lawyer will describe all these schemes in more detail. Good afternoon. I am from auditors company, and we have experience in the criminal justice and criminal proceedings. We analyze the presence of criminal features in any scheme. The deposit guarantee fund investigation department initiated our investigation. Microphone. He doesn't speak to the microphone. We simply do not hear what he is saying. We involved the analysts, lawyers, and experts from auditor companies, investigators from law enforcement agencies, and we produced our opinion, which comprises all the description of all the schemes and all the circumstances, all the people who were involved into unlawful actions made by the administration of Khreschatyk Bank. Those circumstances that we described, they are sufficient for bringing to criminal responsibility. Three major components of the bank insolvency. This was withdrawal of the liquidity assets via doubtful companies when the credits of good borrowers were sold to such doubtful companies. For example, copper price got a credit, but security for this credit was given to a group of companies, Guidance Capital, Artemida, Europa, and they took securities of those companies and as a security. And later on, the interests and the collateral and securities for that loans were bought out was substituted by trash securities, that is for 100 hryvnia, and by collateral of trash securities, bank was deprived from liquidity assets. Then the procurement of securities from potentially related persons. And here we have two companies which officially were included to the list of potentially related to the bank legal entities even before introduction of temporary administration. But nevertheless, the bank spent 219 million hryvnia to buy this companies and concluded the voluntary insurance companies. All those trash companies had a statutory fund of 5,000 hryvnia and only one employed person. So the securities were bought at highly increased prices with the violation of the internal bank procedures, and the bank losses were more than 100 million hryvnia. Later on, the securities of that companies were used in the schemes of withdrawing money from the bank. The third component of the bank insolvency was inefficient and risk-based credit policy. The bank released loans to doubtful in currency, loans in currency to doubtful companies, which 2-3 days later were transferred to non-resident companies in offshore areas, but allegedly for equipment, but that equipment never was supplied to Ukraine. So our opinion suggests that all three violations resulted in violation of the liquidity regulations by the bank, and this, our opinion, is supported by the Institute of Forensic Expertise Department by the Security Service of Ukraine.
Відповідальності осіб, які
And we are very grateful to this institution for their assistance. Our opinion could be used in bringing of those who are guilty to responsibility, who contributed to creating intentionally the above-mentioned conditions. But what surprises us the most is a non-cooperative attitude of some law enforcement officials to the problems that bank faces in bringing back its lost assets. All those conditions, all those circumstances that resulted in the insolvency of that bank could be persecuted by the law enforcement agencies. And nevertheless, they are doing nothing. Of course, there is a lack of coordination between bank, the security guarantee, the deposit guarantee fund, and the investigation bodies. By the way, neither the bank nor the fund are recognized as victims in the proceedings and official documents of law enforcement agencies. I would like to quote the main investigation department of the National Police of Ukraine is carrying out pre-court investigation in the criminal case registered in the register and investigating the facts of illegal appropriation of bank funds, money laundering in line with Article 191, Article 205, 209, and 218. The pre-court investigation has established that a group of unknown people collated with Khreschatyk administration had carried out illegal withdrawal of bank funds from the Khreschatyk bank, aiming to legalize further these money assets, and this resulted in the bank insolvency and bankruptcy. That is, almost 2 years, the main investigation department of our national police has been carrying investigation, and they have not recognized neither the bank nor the deposit guarantee fund the victims of this crime. Moreover, the investigation department is making pressure on our investigators. So my conclusion is as follows. We carried out a full analysis, full investigation how the insolvency of the bank was stimulated, and found out that before introduction of temporary administration, all the assets were withdrawn from the bank, and now this complicates the paying back of deposits of the bank depositors and settling the debts of the bank. Dear friends, thank you for your explanation. Now we have Q&A session.
Financial Club. I would like to ask, in the similar situation, about 11 banks were able, through court institutions, they confirmed the fact that their bringing out of the market was illegal, and what are the activities of the fund concerning these banks? So you file to the investigation institutions, but how can you resolve the situation connected with all these 11 institutions? This bank is not like other banks, and the decisions are individual concerning the banks. So we go along this way. Yes, we have big problems with Ukraine Bank. You know that we provided 1.8 billion to depositors, and then there were strange decisions of the court, and they say that Ukrencom Bank was created in Severodonetsk, and according to court decision, all assets of Ukraine Bank were provided to this institution, and obligations, and all depositors, they have their own interests, and the owners try to promote their interests, and the process is not so quick, and not all the judges take decisions to the benefit of owners. There are judges who have a proper view of this problem, and yes, we have a lot of court hearings now, and we have support of law enforcement bodies, but this way is hard, but we move forward. Zlata Bank, it was out of the register, then it was brought back to the register because the registrator didn't write the court decision correctly, and now we are still fighting. So first about Khreschatyk Bank, we are waiting for the hearing in the first instance, and in the end result we do not know in what category it will get. And about these 11 banks, this decision is not to the benefit of NB, but in other decisions are more positive for the fund than the national bank. So we will see what will happen in case of Khreschatyk. So we see that this process is ongoing, and now this is the first aspect, and the second one, when the decisions are taken and they came into force, and the decisions of the National Bank and the fund, because our decisions are based on the decision of the National Bank about the insolvency and liquidation of the bank if they are cancelled. So there won't be any legal resolution of this problem, and stakeholders, they can appeal against such decisions, but if the court believes that the party is right, so but the bank won't be returned to the market. There is no such a mechanism in the world, and we do not have such a mechanism, so the bank is in some gray area. So, and this is a black hole, and there is no way out for the bank out of this hole. It means that in this case, creditors, they become the hostages of the situation. There is no way out for the bank. Sergei Shevchuk, League. 3 questions to Vladyslav about forensic examination. You said that the results were confirmed. Is this enough in order that the law enforcement bodies see these results of the forensic as the real proof in the court and in the investigations also? There was information in February that the Fund of Guarantees provided filed a case, and it wasn't about Khreshchatyk Bank. And what is the result of these cases, and what is your strategy? And the third, we now see that you are speaking about Vasyl Khmelnytsky, who actively develop his business and creates some innovative parks. So in order to bring him to responsibility, political will is needed. And what is the opinion of the fund? And taking into account the situation, this person has a good business and everything is okay with him now, but you provide proofs that there was a fraud in the bank. So what are your chances in such a situation? What can be done to have some hopes for this? The first question was to me, the whole information that is in our opinion that is provided to the fund can be used in criminal proceedings that are active and in the new ones that can be opened based on this information, and our opinion can be used as a proof as it is envisaged by criminal and procedural code. Unfortunately, this is a long process. That's why we cannot hope for quick results here, but we hope for results on the whole. We can go back to this question at the end of the year. We will see the results, and we wish that you observe these processes, and we are ready to inform you about our results. So we have only first hearings, and this is progress. This is a difficult issue for the new judiciary system, and not everyone is prepared for this, but we are ready to continue. We are ready to fight to the end, and we promote the interests of the society on the whole, of the banks and the fund of the guarantee, deposit guarantee. And what about the fund? What can it provide? So there is a bank, there is a case of siphoning of the money, and we know about these losses, and we want to get compensation as representatives of the depositors concerning those facts that were recorded. And about the interested parties, they influenced the decisions of the bank concerning the management of assets, and we have the questions about the activity or inactivity. So we can follow 3 ways, and the fund works on this. It is really difficult. We won't speak about political will. We are speaking about consequences and why these people still feel good and develop their business and are not afraid of anything. And next is about criminal proceedings. We try to get a status, proper status in this case, and also the other claim, and this is a loan process, especially taking into account that these assets are in foreign jurisdictions, and there were 7 claims filed, and they were all lost, and we have tens of forensic examinations, and the ACTIO helped us in carrying out such forensic audits, and this will contribute to this process. And also there are questions to those who took decisions concerning the assets, and the third way is now being tested, and such claims were filed, and we will see the results, whether this way was correct and whether it will yield material results. So we have 3 ways, 3 scenarios, and we will see what will be the next. And in the situation we are facing, we should be creative, and we should have serious motivation to continue. I would like to add several words. Our task is not to fight against someone specific. Our task is to return the assets, to return money to the depositors. We believe that all businesses should flourish, but if you want to flourish, you should return this money that you got, and we will be really happy for you if you develop. I have a comment about the slides. There are criminal code proceedings about top management. What about civil cases against top management, and what will be their responsibility, whether this responsibility will be established? So based on the information contained in our opinion, the actions of each official, those who are specified in these slides and those who are not on the slide, because there is a lack of space on those slides. So there are grounds for bringing them to criminal and civil responsibility. And even if they don't have money to compensate due to such decisions, if their guilt is proven, based on this, we can establish the fact, finally, about the bringing the bank to insolvency and to establish the guilty persons, and to file the case against those people who had those assets. 5 minutes ago we spoke about these people in more detail. I've mentioned that 5 claims were filed for a big sum, and this is about the actions or inactivity of these persons, and this is Article 118. And about civil claims, yes, we will file them. So our time is up. If you have questions, you can put them off records. Thank you.